Hi there. So it's time to learn about the box model. So the box model consists of three key concepts. First the border, then padding, and then the margin. So we're going to talk about these three concepts within the next three videos. All right, so this material is going to be pretty important, so you got to pay close attention to these lessons because it's really going to help you. All right, so first we're going to start talking about the border concept. So there are three properties that relate to the border. We got width, color, and style. So say we created an HTML page in which we have a div with class A, and then in the div we're going to have a paragraph with some kind of text in it, just text, for example. And then in CSS we're going to set the size of this div to 200 pixels for the width. Height could be at 300 pixels. Now let's add another property to our styles, and this is going to be a new one for you. It's called border width, 5 pixels. So then we're going to have border color, gray. And as you can see, now the borders of the block are gray and they have a width of 5 pixels. As you can tell from the names of these properties, border width sets the width of the border and border color sets its color. So what if we change the value of border width to say 10 pixels? Well, then the width of the borders is going to be 10 pixels. So note though that when we write border width 10 pixels, it means that the borders of all four sides are going to be 10 pixels. But what if we write the following? Border width, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 30 pixels, and 10 pixels. In this case, the values are going to be set individually going clockwise starting from the top. So the top is going to be 10, and then the right border 20, bottom 30, and the left one 10 pixels. And what if we write border width 30 pixels and 10 pixels? Well, in the case where we specify two values, like in this example, then the 30 pixels is going to be applied to the top and bottom borders, and the next value is going to be applied to the left and right borders. It's going to be 10 pixels accordingly. So what if we write three values though? For example, we could have border width 10, 30, and 20 pixels. And then the top border is going to be 10, bottom will be 20, and then left and right is going to be 30 pixels. All right, good. So we got that cleared up pretty much. Now let's learn another property. It's called border style. And this property allows you to change the border type. So by default, we get a single solid border line. But as you can see on the top of the screen, there are many different options for the border style. So for example, if we're going to write border style solid, then we're going to get a solid line. Border style solid is what the default value is, so there's actually no need to write that. Nothing's going to change. But if we change solid to dashed, for example, then we're going to get a dashed line. And if we write double, we're going to have 2 lines. So you get the idea. Basically, by using the border style property, you can change the style of your border line. Now let's learn another thing. We used to write each property separately. So for example, we had border width 10 pixels, and then border color, gray, and then border style, double. Basically, we set the values for width, color, and style separately. But as you can see, this takes up 3 lines. You can actually do this in a single line. You just need to write border, colon, and then 10 pixels, double, gray. And note that when using this shortened version, you need to set the values in the following order. So first you're going to start with border width, then border style, and lastly border color. I need to point this out once again. You need to set the values exactly in this order. So width, style, and then color. All right, just to conclude things here, let's see how you can make a block where each side has a unique style or color. So far, we only made blocks where all sides were the same, but it's also possible to make each side have its own style. For example, if we're going to write border top 5 pixels solid black, then the top border is going to look like this. It's just going to be a solid black line. And if we write border right 10 pixels double gray, then the right border is going to be 10 pixels wide, double line, and it's going to be gray. You can probably guess that there's a border bottom, of course. So if we write border bottom 5 pixels solid green, for example, then the border is going to be solid 5 pixels in green. And finally, there's also a border left, of course. So by setting 20 pixels solid blue, for example, we're going to get a solid blue line with a width of 20 pixels. All right, so notice what we've done here. By setting the values separately for border top, border right, border bottom, and border left, we got a unique style for each side of the block. Okay, good. So we got everything cleared up with the theory part. Now let's move on to some practical examples in the text editor. Okay, so on the screen, we can see that the block for which we set the width of 300 pixels and height 200 pixels, and the background color is set to orange. All right, so let's add a border to our block, and for that we're going to write border width 10 pixels, for example, and then we're going to set the values border style, let's say solid, and border color green, for example. So let's save that and refresh the page. And now, as you can see, now we have a green line at 10 pixels wide around our block. And also, we can change the value of border style to say, how about double? And we end up with a nice double line like you see on the screen. So we could also change it to a dotted line, for example. So basically to any value you saw earlier in this presentation. Also, we can use the shorthand version instead of having to write these 3 lines. So for that, we're going to simply write border colon, and then first we're going to set the width 10 pixels, then the line style we're going to have dotted, for example, and then the color green. By doing this, we basically get the same result, but we write it in 1 line instead of 3. So also we can set separate styles for separate borders. For that, let's make specifically the bottom line solid and red, for example. We're going to write the word border, then a hyphen, and then the side of the border that we want to change. So in our case, it's the bottom. And then we set the styles for border bottom. Let's leave it at 10 pixels, but then we're going to write solid red. And we're going to refresh the page. And now we see that only the bottom line turned to red and solid. So this way you can mess around with it and setting any kind of borders you want for your block. And that's it for this lesson, and I will see you in the next video.